Hello, Dolphins fans, haters, and everyone in between to your favorite show, discussing the greatest franchise in sports, the Miami Dolphins. My name is Moose, your host, and today I'm excited to get going as we take a deep look at the 2020 quarterback draft class, analyzing the prospects' ups and downs as we get even closer to the big night, which is now less than a week away. As always, we'll also take a quick look at the latest stories published over at FinsPod.com. I'm excited for this one. Let's dive in.
Fitzpatrick stepping up, fakes the throw, gonna run to the 5, to the end zone for the touchdown.
So on this episode, we're just going to be doing a basic snapshot of who these quarterbacks are from the top of the class to sort of the mid-tier level, just to get a feel of how truly they compare to each other, especially, there's a lot of talk with those top-tier quarterbacks, Burrow and Tua, but we're going to take a look at some other ones such as Fromm and Jacob Eason, to sort of figure out where they stand relative to these top-level quarterbacks. And also, compared to some other classes that have come out in the recent past, and a lot of the way that people have thought the trend of the NFL has been going with these mobile quarterbacks, sort of the Lamar Jackson model, there appears to be sort of a return to a traditional styled passer, especially in this class. So the trend of mobility has definitely not completely taken over in the college ranks as many people suspect. Accuracy and decisiveness with quick decision making still reign supreme. So we're going to start with Jacob Eason out of Washington. He finished the 2019 regular season with 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. So Jacob Eason, sort of like that classic guy that you would expect to be, a pocket passer. He's got a big body, a huge arm. He throws with some touch. He's accurate when given time. His problem, though, is whenever pressure gets involved, he really struggles. The drop-off in accuracy is apparent. He's one of those quarterbacks where when he feels pressure, rather than sort of stepping up and finding room in the pocket, he tends to sort of drift, and that ruins his footwork, which, it kind of sails some of his passes. He loses some accuracy. So it's definitely not a top-tier quarterback in the sense of he can fully develop into like a potential starter, but I don't believe he's someone that we'll see get drafted in the first couple rounds. He's more of a developmental guy and someone who, if you can sit him for a couple of years, is probably going to end up being a career backup. One thing is, though, compared to some of these other quarterbacks, consistently when he is given time, he is very accurate. So if he goes to the right spot, maybe a Saints type, maybe Vikings sit behind Kirk Cousins for a little bit of time, and you kind of build a run game and he gets to play off the play action pass a lot, similar to a Tannehill where, we bring up Tannehill every episode going forward, but similar to a Tannehill where if you put the pieces around him, he could win for you, but I just don't see him as a viable threat to potentially be a starter in the coming future. And then for Jake Fromm, he came in real hot as a freshman at Georgia. He actually replaced Jacob Eason, took his job from him and held on to it, which forced Jacob Eason to transfer over to Washington. So Fromm had 2,860 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. So he definitely took care of the ball much, much better. And compared to some of these other quarterbacks, it was pretty apparent just watching his game tape that he really did read the field. He wouldn't just like stare down one receiver and sort of throw it to him like a lot of other quarterbacks Herbert would do all the time. He was far more inclined to actually take what the defense gave him, which was definitely something I appreciated to watch. And you just felt that he's a system quarterback, but he makes good, smart decisions. So that's something that helped Georgia, consistently be a competitive playoff team during his entire tenure there. And he just ran up against some better talent and some stronger opponents. Although, he in this past year, he did struggle with some talent at the receiver position. He lost Mecole Hardman. He did have DeAndre Swift, who was definitely a viable asset. So I don't want to act like, he didn't have anything. But he definitely did show that if you give him pieces and you give him a coherent offense, he can sort of, dink and dunk down the field as well as take shots. The thing I did like about Jake Fromm a lot is one, he had this really cool ball flip that he would do. Definitely reckless, but if you go watch some of his highlights, almost every snap he'll sit back in the pocket and flip the ball around just in his hands, which definitely shows the level of confidence that you can appreciate and some swagger. But if he gets hit at the wrong time, I feel like that ball is likely to pop out. But hey, don't change it, man. It does look really cool. And so overall, though, he is very accurate. And compared to some of these other quarterbacks, he looks for matchups. So that's something I really appreciated. if he saw that there was a linebacker on a fast receiver or a tight end out of the backfield, he didn't wait for the other routes to develop. He just dumped it down because he knew that at the end of the day, it would be positive yards. And a lot of times with the playmakers he had at Georgia, it would be way more than just 5 yards. It would burst into a 20-yard gain. So compared to some of these other quarterbacks, I think Jake Fromm is a much headier prospect, and that's something that if you can draft him in the second round, you can really develop with that. And so a team like New England, unfortunately, a team like the Saints could take a guy like him, sort of let him sit and learn the system, and then you can throw him in and know that he's not going to make mistakes for your team. He's going to lead your offense, and that isn't necessarily the sexiest thing when you're talking about a high-level quarterback, which is why I think he's sort of fallen down the ranks compared to where he was before, coming into his junior year of college, where people really thought he would most likely become a top 10 pick. So, there are flaws to his game, but overall he isn't a bad asset. For Miami, though, I wouldn't really think he's someone that we would target. The reason being, the Dolphins already have Josh Rosen. And although I think Fromm has more physical tools than Josh Rosen, he's got a thicker build. His pocket presence is a little bit better. What he provides, his heady play, that's something you already have in Rosen, who's already been in the league and has been adjusted, as much as he can at this stage to sort of what the NFL speed is. So I don't see the Dolphins making a move on a guy like Fromm. I think another franchise will definitely take a chance on him, but the Dolphins most likely will not be doing that because you already have Rosen. So if something happens where you aren't able to get your guy this early in the first round, then Miami might as well just stick with Fitzpatrick and Rosen going forward, because taking a chance on a guy like Fromm, taking a chance on a guy like Jacob Eason, when you could help shore up the offensive line, add talent to the interior defensive line, a playmaker. I think that has much more value to this team right now than taking a quarterback that has a ceiling. And I think with Fromm, there seems to be a bit of a ceiling. But if he goes to the right situation and is put in the right system, he's definitely someone who can make plays. Speaking of making plays, Jordan Love, our next quarterback out of Utah State, he finished 2019 with 3,402 yards, 20 interceptions, and 17 touchdowns. So compared to the last two quarterbacks we talked about, Jordan Love is one of these quarterbacks who is getting a lot of first-round buzz, a lot of top 10 potential buzz. I know that Mel Kiper and Todd McShay have a bet going on right now that they believe McShay believes that Jordan Love will be taken prior to Justin Herbert. Personally, I don't think that's happening. After sort of watching him, as much as I did appreciate the physical tools, he's got a great build, a whippy arm, a quick release. He can throw, as it's been thrown around ever since Mahomes got drafted, but throw his arm in different types of angles. That essentially just means falling back sort of in an awkward position. He's still able to get the ball out quickly by adjusting his motion, which is not something that every quarterback can do. And he doesn't seem to lose a lot of zip on the ball when he has to do that, which is really good. He's athletic. He's able to, on a quick, zone read play, he can go up and get you 6 to 7, 8 yards pretty easily. He can sort of run down the field if given a chance. He's not a thick guy, so you don't really want him taking a lot of hits, but, on the goal line, he's definitely a weapon when it comes to that. The one thing I want to say is there's been a lot of talk of his 17 interceptions thrown, and I won't lie, that's something that is hard for me to look past watching his overall game tape. Although you can completely acknowledge that compared to his 2018 season where he played much, much better, where he had a real talent, good coaching staff, he lost all of that in 2019, and it's apparent. The problem I have is that if you are going to be a franchise elevating quarterback, then you will be elevating that talent around you. And Utah State too many times just got walloped by other teams, not even, SEC teams, ranked teams, teams that were at Utah State's level. So the defenses in the NFL are going to be much, much harder to face. The windows are going to be much, much tighter. You're going to have to make decisions much, much faster. And so if you're throwing 17 interceptions, even though everyone can acknowledge you're trying to play hero ball, that you don't have the weapons, so you're trying to force the issue, the NFL, it's more than that. You have to sort of you have to be playing chess when the defense is trying to play checkers in order for your offense to be an effective, powerful weapon. And with Jordan Love, it didn't feel that way. It felt like he would make a big play every now and then he'd have multiple throws in a row that were just sort of, you shook your head at. So for that reason, I wouldn't take him. And frankly, I think Jake Fromm is a better prospect than Jordan Love. I think people are far too hung up on Jordan Love's physical tools, which I understand. But if a quarterback leads the nation in interceptions, at Utah State, regardless of everything else around them, how many of these top quarterback prospects, these elite ones, the Russell Wilsons, the Aaron Rodgers, the Drew Brees, when these guys were coming out of college, they were not turnover machines. Even Jameis Winston was not a turnover machine relative to Jordan Love. So I agree. He went to a bad school when it comes to powerhouse talent. When you're comparing him to the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Oregons, and the LSU's, but you can't ignore the fact that when he was forced to make a decision, he would often misread the coverage. He would throw it in a tight window that had a underneath coverage linebacker who would just snag it out of the way. He made too many of those boneheaded decisions that I just think make him sort of undraftable in the first round. I would take a chance on him in the second or third round if Miami misses him, maybe trade back into the first round if all goes to crap. But at the end of the day, when you're making this choice as the Dolphins franchise, you shouldn't be going for someone that you think could be the guy. You have to go with someone who you believe after watching the tape is the guy, someone you've met with and have confidence is going to be that, the head of your franchise for the next 10 years, someone who won't be, shocked by the level of play and competition that they will face at this next level. And I think Jordan Love will have that struggle. Yes, you can put a guy like that on the Mahomes plan, but at the end of the day, Patrick Mahomes has not only special talent physically, more so than even Jordan Love, he also was a good decision maker, and he put points up in college. Jordan Love had far too many games where they would score under 24 points, and that just won't cut it at the NFL level. Moving on to everyone's favorite prospect to hate, Justin Herbert. So Justin Herbert is by far, in terms of Dolphins Twitter at least, the most polarizing prospect and quarterback in this NFL draft. The reason, unlike these other quarterbacks we've discussed, he's actually, Jordan Love a little bit, but Justin Herbert's really been linked to the Miami Dolphins. They have been researching him going back to Mike Tannenbaum. They've been attending his games since he was a sophomore, junior, and now his past senior year. They have been keeping an eye on him for a long time. The reason? Because if he puts it all together, he's a kid who has all the talent in the world. Justin Herbert is physically one of the most gifted quarterbacks to come out in a while. Why do I say that? Because he is 6'6". All right, he is tall. He's got a rocket arm. His build's good. He's athletic. He's pretty much on the same level, if not a little more athletic than Jordan Love when it comes to running straight, zone read options. He finished the season with 3,471 yards, 32 touchdowns to only 6 interceptions. So compared to Jake Fromm, who threw 24 touchdowns, Jordan Love's 20, and Eason's 23. He was far more productive, and he threw far less interceptions, especially compared to Jordan Love. So Justin Herbert's by far a better prospect. It was underutilized at Oregon, and a lot of things were underutilized. Coherent offense was underutilized. They sort of ran a very interesting scheme that focused a lot on spreading the defense vertically and then taking strikes down the field horizontally down the field, every once in a while. But mainly they would use screen passes as an extension of their run game. They would try to tire the defense out, and that doesn't really allow a quarterback to really showcase how they would translate to the NFL. So that made it kind of difficult and made the Oregon games a little bit harder to watch and sort of evaluate how this would translate. His offense was just not something that we would see in the NFL. Now, he did have a lot of experience. He played for 4 years, and that's something that's a bit concerning because you would hope that a quarterback that played for 4 years would elevate his his program. And although Herbert did that, the amount of talent they were getting and sort of those big games that he would play in, he would come up small. And so for that reason, compared to the next two that we're going to talk about, I just feel like Justin Herbert doesn't have that it factor. Great kid, got all the physical tools. He feels like a natural quarterback. Everything about him feels like he should be very good. But similar to Ryan Tannehill, and I know I bring him up again, but similar to Ryan Tannehill, he doesn't have that killer instinct, that thing you want, in big moments. Just even thinking back to the Auburn game early this year, you needed him to step up, but when sort of everything around him started to fall apart, he wasn't able to put the team on his back. And now, given he did not have these top level receivers that some of these other quarterbacks had, he was working with sort of small, shiftier guys, not really sort of big bodied receivers who could truly take over the game. He was asked to do a lot in that aspect, but regardless, I just think his offense didn't suit him to translating well, so you would have to put a lot of time into developing him. Physically, he has all the tools, similar to a Drew Lock, and Drew Lock sort of turned out very well, at least from the 5-game sample last year, going 4-1 and really showing some promise. Similar to Drew Lock, I think if Justin Herbert goes to a place, even if it is Miami, it depends where we take him, but even if he comes to Miami, if you ask him to do less. If essentially you make it a running team and you ask him to throw it 20 to 25 times a game, sort of attack the middle of the field, pre-planned routes, ready to go plays, nothing that requires him to sort of read the field, because that's something that he seemed to struggle with. He would, unless given a lot of time to look left to right, which just isn't a realistic possibility in the NFL. He would stare down receivers a lot. So if you make him think less and not have to make these difficult decisions, that's something that I think he could thrive in, similar to Drew Lock, where they didn't ask him to, and with time, he can learn how to read defenses better. He can learn what to take what the defense is offering, because his arm talent's out of this world. He can throw it to all levels of the field, deep balls, beautiful passes. He can flick it 60 yards and make it look easy. Compared to Jordan Love, his arm is far superior, in my opinion, just in terms of power. Those quick slant routes, they're in the receiver's hands, and he's running up the field faster than any other quarterback in this class. He's got accuracy on the out route, so he can make these throws. Oregon just didn't ask him to make it consistently enough to really get a good gauge, and so that's sort of what made it hard. So that arm does allow stretch the field and sort of allows him to utilize the offense more than a lot of other quarterbacks who are just dump it off. He will take shots down the field and stretch a defense out. So for Chan Gailey, a running attack with the play action involved, I could see why there's so many reports that the Dolphins are linked to him and are interested. However, I just think after everything Miami has gone through over the last 7 years, when there's two prospects who we're about to get into who are at a much higher level, and you've sort of obtained all this ammunition, I just don't see how you can make another decision. It would be being scared. It wouldn't be true to what they've been doing so far to go with Justin Herbert at this stage, unless they have that much confidence that they can coach up better than the competition. If they truly believe that, and that's sort of the cockiness that comes with bringing in a system versus relying on your talent, is you believe that you want a certain type of guy to do a certain type of role, and that is even more clear at the quarterback position. So if Tua's injuries concerns are valid enough and you believe you can make Justin Herbert work, you can coach him up and have him do what you want, and it will, thrive in the NFL. Maybe throw it 20 times a game, sort of quick routes, quick reads. Don't make him think too hard early in his career, and he'll make all the throws. He'll really help spread the defense. Use his giant receivers that he's never really had before. These thick, big-bodied guys on the outside. I could see it work, and it could be very exciting, absolutely. But I just don't see enough consistency from him at Oregon, especially when he had the largest sample size out of all the quarterbacks. It was just frustrating that you just wanted to see a little bit more, and Justin Herbert was not able to provide that. But not completely out on the kid from all accounts, and just even seeing interviews here and there, he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he seems to be smart. And people say that he understands football very well, and he's been killing all those meetings. So you never really know. But I'd like the Miami Dolphins to try to acquire some quarterback with semblance of a killer instinct, and I just don't see that in Justin Herbert. Although, hey, could be wrong, but we'll see.
Right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins! The Crimson Tide will not be denied. True freshman.
Now moving on to Tua Tagovailoa, who's the second quarterback I have here. So he finished the season. Obviously, it was cut short due to the hip injury with 2,840 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So, one thing screams out in those numbers, although, yes, the yards are less, he was productive as hell. Not only was he productive throwing for 33 yards in a limited span, he only threw 3 interceptions. So he was efficient. He would not turn the ball over. He was the definition of taking what the defense gave him and then taking shots when it made sense to take shots. I won't talk too much about Tua because we did speak about him last week, but just some of the major highlights with his game and the reason that, he is multiple steps above these other quarterbacks behind him. It's just his footwork. He's got incredible footwork. He's very graceful in the pocket. He feels like he's aware of his blocks, and he sort of feels pressure well. And despite his build, which is why a lot of people are concerned he won't last, I do believe that his ability to evade pressure, if he learns to get rid of the ball, and not try to make plays, which I think can be coached. If that happens, I wouldn't be as concerned with him taking unnecessary hits because he's elusive in the pocket. And yes, NFL, big defensive tackle, defensive end gets their hands on him, he's going to go down. But again, most quarterbacks do, unless you do get that very elusive guy. And Tua, he can, compared to these other guys, he steps up in the pocket better than anyone else with confidence. He steps up in the pocket and knows exactly where he wants to go. He doesn't fall back in the face of pressure. He either tries to move laterally and sort of give himself more time for the play to develop, or if he knows that someone's about to break and he just needs to get up and fire it, he does. And compared to the rest of the quarterbacks, he does that masterfully. So, the problem with him is that he had excellent talent around him. So it kind of makes it hard to evaluate. How good are you really? Because you have, Jerry Jeudy, arguably a top 15 pick, potentially going to be an AFC East rival if the Jets are smart, unless CeeDee Lamb's on the board. But, Jerry Jeudy would be a great option for the Jets, and we'd have to face him 2 times a year, and I think we'll understand why Tua had a lot of those numbers. He also had a lot of other weapons, in the running game, great offensive line, a great defense. But I think the important thing to note with Tua is that Alabama's always had a good team. The reason over the last few years that they have been dominant at a level that they weren't even when they were dominant is because he elevated that offense. Playing in multiple systems, he showed that he understands football. He makes good decisions. He's decisive. He gets rid of the ball quickly. And for that reason, I do believe the Dolphins are going to take Tua in this draft, because despite all the smoke going around, out of the rest of these prospects, he makes decisions decisively. Him and Joe Burrow especially, and I think Miami puts Joe Burrow right there. I mean, watching their game tape, they both are right there at that same sort of high elite level of play in terms of quickly taking the snap, sitting back, and where you want to go with it, and if the play's broken. You don't sit there, hold on to it. Tua would hold on to it at times to try to make plays, but he would not do that when it's a tight game or a third and medium. He did it when they were up by a lot, and he was just trying to make a big play. So far more excusable than some of these other quarterbacks. But he, for the most 99% of the time, when he would step back, based on what the defense was giving him, a shallow underneath route, dumping it off to his running back, or taking that shot, to the outside of the field, deep down the field, he would do it, and he would do it with precision and accuracy. Watching Tua was very fun. The fact that he's a fellow lefty like myself, was also nice to watch. His pocket presence was also a treat. Very Romo-esque, his ability to sort of, spin out of pressure, making some Russell Wilson-like plays. So definitely something that can be built upon in the NFL. And so I do believe his injury concerns are overblown. However, that's not something that I get to say because I'm not going to get fired for having that opinion. So a lot of these GMs have a lot to think about when it comes to Tua. So I'm excited to see where he ends up going. Hopefully it's aqua and orange. If it can't be this next guy.
Burrow's got time, launching for the end zone, jump ball, touchdown, Terrence Marshall. And Burrow believes that was a crucial play to stretch the lead. You can see by the reaction. Dropped a dime again.
Watching Joe Burrow, it was honestly very difficult to find negatives. Now, yes, he played for the national championship team. He's going to have multiple first-round defensive players taken. He's going to have multiple first-round offensive players taken, top 100 players overall taken on the offensive line, in the running back position, receiver position, corner. Yes, he had a great team, but LSU has always had a great team. What makes Joe Burrow different is his gaming. He's a gamer. He's got the killer instinct that we're talking about. And, yes, it's a little concerning that where was that instinct earlier? It came out towards the end, but, he's a young kid. It takes guys time to kind of grow into their own. And how consistent he was playing at that level for the entire season, all the way into January when he played the National College Championship, National College Football Championship game, he was consistently elite. And that was something that, similar to Tua, they both possessed, but Burrow was able to do it through the entire year and didn't get affected by any injuries. He's got a great big physical body, one that can take some hits in the pocket. He's got a very tight, quick release. He makes, compared to Tua, he makes even quicker and more decisive decisions, and he has a tremendous accuracy, even off platform. Obviously, not fading back in the pocket, but he isn't able to completely step into his throw. He can still get the ball there. Yeah, there might be less mustard on that, but the ball's going to end up where it should be. Very accurate. He actually throws down the field, and he throws it down the field with a lot of confidence. Yes, having some great elite receivers helps, and some great play calling by now the Carolina Panthers, Joe Brady, but you still have to make those throws. And frankly, I highly recommend just watching some, maybe don't watch some of his game tape because it'll just make you want him more. But, he's able to put the ball in the tightest of windows downfield, and it really is a pleasure to watch. He's, compared to Tua, way more elusive, the most elusive quarterback in this draft in terms of feeling the pressure, stepping up, finding the zone, understanding his blockers and putting himself in a position to find the throwing lane. He's got a big body. He's got his arm isn't the strongest, but he can make every throw you need him to make, and all his other, skills and abilities sort of elevate him past that. So again, the only risk is that, he had elite playmakers around him. You didn't see this beforehand. So, when I say that, his freshman, sophomore, junior year, people weren't talking about him. People felt like he was a mid-round pick coming into this season, and he just burst onto the scene. Now, the great ones can do that. And so with him, it's truly boom or bust. How good he played, he's either going to be that good in the NFL, like truly be a top quarterback the second he steps in, just because of the confidence he plays with, or he's going to step in and struggle because he was a product of a system, of an NFL caliber coach in Joe Brady and some great talent around him. And, he was a confident older player who had played enough college football that they felt like they knew what they were doing at that stage. And, he put the pieces together and had a magical run. That's possible, but I think it's far more likely that Joe Burrow is going to be a stud in the NFL. And for that reason, I had no intention of saying the Dolphins should trade up, and try to get Joe Burrow, because I'm a big fan of the Flores approach and everything that they've been saying, in terms of building a team and the quarterback, supplementing that team and elevating that team. But first, you have to have good pieces on the roster around that quarterback. After watching Joe Burrow, I think he's that guy, all capital THAT, that guy. Tua has those elements, but again, just the injury risk with Joe Burrow, there's none of that. You've seen him do it, and I do believe he can do it at that next level. And I do believe that the fact that Miami has shown interest in him is valid. And if he came to Miami, I think we'd be a better team at a quicker pace than with Tua. No one can really predict the ceilings of either of these players. That really has to do with circumstance and things that we can't really predict. But in terms of immediate impact, Joe Burrow's more NFL ready, in my opinion. He's anticipation's excellent. He throws with some great touch. He's so accurate down the field. Throwing down the sideline is amazing, and just the thought of throwing to Preston Williams and Devontae Parker is truly exciting. Even a guy like Gesicki he could really use. So Joe Burrow is that guy, and he's definitely the number one quarterback. So just to go back and sort of recap that list. So the number one quarterback, based on the evaluation here at FinsPod, we have Joe Burrow. A close second, Tua Tagovailoa. Number 3, there's Justin Herbert. 4 is actually Jake Fromm. And then 5 is Jordan Love. Just like I had said, Jordan Love is too inconsistent there. And then rounding out the top 6, we got Jacob Eason. So, we'll see how the draft shakes out. We're now less than a week away. But I'm very excited, and I hope you enjoyed sort of that evaluation and got a little bit better of an understanding of who these guys are. And I hope you guys go and reach out to me at Twitter at FinsPod and sort of tell me what you guys think of this quarterback quarterback discussion. Who's the guy you guys want? And do you disagree with anything I've said? Do you feel that I'm completely blind and that Jordan Love is potentially truly the next Mahomes, or maybe Mahomes isn't even his comp? Or do you think Joe Burrow is a one-year wonder? Do you think that this is something that it really was a flash in the pan, and the fact that people are already anointing him is probably too big of a sell job at this point in time? Let us know. Lastly, we don't got a lot of time left on the show today. I'm just going to quickly run over some of the articles that were published that you can check out over at FinsPod.com. So firstly, we discussed what could the Dolphins do in the draft in the first round, and a lot of people talk about Miami moving up to obtain their guy, maybe trading back if things don't work out well, getting out of that first round with one of their picks. We discussed the possibility of Miami potentially taking 4 first-round players. The reason for this is they have the assets, and a lot of other teams don't have the assets in the early middle rounds, second, third, fourth rounds, specifically the San Francisco 49ers, who now have picks 13 and 31. They will most likely use that 13th pick or potentially move back a few spots. But Miami might eye that 31st overall pick, and maybe they want to go get that left tackle that they weren't able to secure with taking a quarterback, a safety, or a running back. I hope they don't take a running back. But regardless, if you move up to the first round, you can get that level of talent that you believe is there and available for 5 years. So that's something that is really worth it. So there is a potential that the Dolphins do move up with one of these teams to secure a player that they don't think will last to them at 39. And then secondly, we discussed the Miami Dolphins defensive secondary. After the signing of Byron Jones, the secondary looks like it could truly be a force in terms of the NFL. You have Xavier Howard, you have Byron Jones, sort of locking down those sides, and it'll already be hard enough for defenses to make for opposing offenses to make plays on the defense. But Bobby McCain returning, Eric Rowe sort of finding a good spot, sort of playing that strong safety position, understanding the defense well, uncovering some gems like Nick Needham, Adrian Colbert really showing out at the safety position for some depth, and the Dolphins re-signing him as well. So, the secondary definitely is coming alive, and it's something to be excited about. It's young, it's athletic, it fits the type of style of defense that Brian Flores likes and coached up in New England. So we did take a look at that, so feel free to check that one out. And then speaking of New England, the most recent article that we published was why the Patriots actually see the Dolphins as a threat compared to the Jets and the Bills. And obviously this is a biased piece, a little bit of a fluff piece pertaining to the Dolphins coming up. But the reason that I was fluffing them up, one, is I'm a big fan, but two, I think you've been seeing a lot of the Patriots be connected to these, quarterbacks, the Jordan Loves, the Justin Herberts, sort of meeting with them. Most likely they've met with Joe Burrow, obviously just for their due diligence, fully knowing they're not going to get him. And same with Tua Tagovailoa. The reason they won't be able to get one of these guys is unless one of those 4, potentially Jordan Love, if I had to guess, begins to slip, they won't be in striking distance. They don't have the assets to move up from 23 to realistically give up. And plus the Patriots aren't that type of team. They compared to the Dolphins, believe it even more strongly that they can make any guy work at the quarterback position because they've done that before early in Brady's career, and they believe they can do that again with Stidham. If not Stidham, you can go sign a guy like Dalton, maybe even Jameis Winston, but no need to spend capital that you could use shoring up the defensive front, the secondary, the offensive line, other positions of need. So the Patriots are in not a rebuilding, but a quasi-rebuilding stage, so I don't see them making a move for the quarterback position. Now, they understand the Dolphins are interested in taking a quarterback and will likely take a quarterback. So, classic Bill Belichick. They are making sure that they know these kids inside and out. They know them. They interview them. They know what makes them tick. They talk through film with them, see how they see the field. Why? Because they can build their own profiles. And now, whoever Miami takes, New England has a pretty good profile for when they face off inevitably. So, that's why I think the Patriots truly view Miami as a threat, because compared to previous years, they've been linked to a lot of quarterbacks. Now, yes, of course, Tom Brady's gone compared to previous years, so of course they're going to be linked to quarterbacks. But just sort of looking at the facts of the situation, they've really pumped up Stidham. They re-signed Hoyer. They most likely will bring a guy in later on, but, the team has a lot of holes. They lost a lot of valuable pieces, and they already were bounced in the first round of the playoffs last year. To think that they can just retool this on a slightly weaker roster, frankly, not that much slightly weaker, significantly weaker roster, and then actually make a run with an inferior quarterback, it's just not doable. So they need to build that team and potentially sign a quarterback. So the fact that they've shown this interest, to me, points to them believing that the Dolphins are going to be taking quarterback high up, as everyone believes. But they just want to make sure that they know who that is. And, I think it's important to analyze who they've been meeting with. So Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, I think Miami picked up the amount of research they were doing on them just, as part of their due diligence, and New England sort of responded. So that's one of those reasons why I just don't trust the Patriots up there. So Tell me what you guys think once you guys read those articles up there. Let the boys know how they're doing. But that'll do it for us here today. I thank you for tuning in to this edition of the FinsPod, and I hope you enjoyed and want to join me again next time. Please subscribe to the show. We're actually now fully available on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, and YouTube. Continue the conversation on Twitter and Instagram at FinsPod, and check out the site for daily news and content at www.FinsPodcom. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day and stay safe. Thanks.